All right, so we're going to get started. Our next interview is with François Blum, that some of you may or may not have seen yet. Blum. Pardon. I don't know how we pronounce it, which language we're doing. So, so he was. I think he's made a return now. He's going to tell us about this. He's made a return to being an entrepreneur, an investor, but he was formerly with Spear Communication, which may or may not have helped launch or been behind the launch of a very successful Craigslist copycat. So, I'm going to ask you to start off by telling us. We're always talking about copycats in Europe and in France. Everyone's obsessed with, is there a copycat of I don't know who in France, in Germany, in Spain? What is a copycat?
If only I knew, I would like to be capable to define it. Especially on the internet, if we were working in the traditional world, and if I would be facing students or people working at P&G or others, I could start lecturing the traditional marketing recipes, talking about innovation and talking about being the first on the marketplace and innovating and being imitated. And obviously it would be then relatively easy for me to demonstrate that even if speed of execution is crucial, and even if obviously when you have well thought your product or strategy, it's really a question of speed, I could also easily argue that you wouldn't succeed that much being a challenger or number two entering a marketplace if you haven't been capable to differentiate yourself from competition, talking about positioning statements, your product, or talking about your brand values. On the internet, it seems to be quite different, just because basically there are several models and a lot of copycats. And it's not because you're the first entering the marketplace that you are the winner, because a lot of those who have entered first have lost the battleground and have disappeared. I can't remember even the name of this company France Telecom bought and Pierre was referring to, but maybe Price Minister was launched in 2001 and this company before. So it's not an advantage to be the first one on this marketplace. There is also a very famous theory from Schumpeter about innovation, and on the internet, just because it's a huge, great network, at the moment there is somebody somewhere having an idea, you can be sure and bet whatever you want that there will be hundreds of people having the same idea. So there will be 100 copycats or just same stories flowering, blooming everywhere. And it doesn't give you any definition to copycat, or it doesn't help you to understand why one could work and the other wouldn't work. So it's a real difficult question. The same way, it's a difficult question that you've raised in the topic of the speech, because talking about France and copycats is also a kind of paradox. Gilles Babinet, when he started his speech, was talking about our famous engineers. He didn't mention the TGV or the Concorde. We are a country of scientists, inventors, innovators, and we're not used that much to do copycats when comparing to Korea or Japan. And at the same time, if you look at the internet, I have a lot of difficulties to remember the name of one single true, innovative, and winning recipe born out of France, being something else than a copycat. Spartoo is a good example, or Sarenza another one. But Zappos existed in the US prior to their launch in France.
Okay, well now let's talk about Le Bon Coin. Can we say it's a copycat? Why don't you start by telling us kind of the story and what you did specifically for this project?
So in fact, I am a kind of very odd entrepreneur. The first company I started when I was a student was a magazine dedicated to creative directors in advertising agencies. And the only reason why I started this business was not that much to make money out of it. By the way, I didn't make any, but just to find a job. And it helped me to find a job. And it took me something like 25 years to reboot and relaunch as an entrepreneur another story. I hope it's going to be more successful. It is 2 weeks old and it's doing apps in this beautiful and newly emerged world of the Apple Store and mobility, etc. And during these 25 years, what I did was basically two things. One, being an intrapreneur, and Le Bon Coin is a kind of very interesting story for entrepreneurs, even if it's done by intrapreneurs. And what I've also done is mentoring people, and the young guy over there with the sniper today with his shots all the time, is calling me Obi-Wan Kenobi just because since probably 2001, what I'm doing is mentoring young companies, helping them to understand, be smart from a strategic standpoint, and quick on their feet, or agile and nimble when moving to execution. So in fact, Le Bon Coin is probably the oldest startup that exists, if not in the world, but at least in Europe. For those who don't know anything about it, it is born in 1996. And it is true. And there were countries in Europe in 1996 that were already using the internet with quite
So the seat that we look at today when we go onto Le Bon Coin
is not a copycat. It is a proven.
It was before
concept.
Craigslist.
It's a proven concept.
Okay.
So the mother of them all is called Blocket, and Blocket means block in Swedish. It has been invented by a guy who has now disappeared, a guy called, difficult to pronounce, Nordstrom in Felkinge. And this guy had a regional site producing free classified with no business model, no money, nothing but just a kind of hobby work. In 1996, something like 10 years after, what Blocket does represent in Sweden, I'm sorry, I won't take questions about my glasses, my sunglasses. I left the other one and I can't read my notes, so I'm keeping them even if it's not that polite. But today it's 6.5% of the Swedish gross domestic product. So the site, Blocket, does represent 6.5% GDP for Sweden. What it means in simple terms is that 9 out of 10 Swedish families are bargaining, doing business on the site. That is one of the top 3 or 4 in Sweden. And that, interestingly, 25% of the 700,000 ads published all the time are sold within a day. So it's a great marketplace. It is the ultimate marketplace. So before Craigslist, before eBay, and even before, obviously, Price Minister. So is eBay a copycat would be my question to you, Roxane.
Well, Pierre's not in the room, so no.
Pierre is not around, but I could answer about Price Minister. What Pierre has done is quite smart, because Price Minister is not an eBay copycat. Even if it has been launched in 2001, 3, 4, 5, or 6 years later, what Pierre has done is one of the key successes for, let's call them copycats, or Me Too, even if they are not. He has transliterated the concept into a country where auction doesn't work that well. Auction works in Anglo-Saxon country, and eBay is the one leading site in Germany, as an example, in the US or in the UK. But it doesn't work in Italy, neither in Italy, Spain, or France. Why? Because we are not used, we don't like auctions. We like fixed price. And Pierre and his team were smart enough to keep the essence and transliterate. Is it a copycat? I don't think so. It's based on the same roots, same principles, but executed well, differently. So is Le Bon Coin, launched in 2006, a copycat of Price Minister? That is a copycat of eBay in itself, a copycat of Blocket. What I know is that Le Bon Coin is not a website, and that may also be interesting. One, Le Bon Coin is a piece of software. So what it does represent today is basically more or less the same than what does Blocket represent in Sweden. It is 15 million ads on the site. It's more than 350,000 unique visitors a day. And it is more than 6 billion page views a month, which basically means that whatever you'll put on Le Bon Coin, there will be instantaneously, within a day or so, 400 people looking at your ads. There is nowhere a site that can basically show the same kind of metrics on this one market, not talking about Facebook, but talking about this one market that is classified, by the way. It is born 5 years ago. So 5 years ago, I was on my own, asked by the shareholders to incubate, reinvent, transliterate, call it the way you want. And obviously the brief was, call it something with 2 O's, just because it's fashionable, and it's better to be called something whose or something Yahoo's, Google's, etc. And the name I came back with was Chez Georgette. Don't ask me to translate it in English. Just remember, for those who are not French, the name of your grandmother, and it's probably even more old-fashioned than the first name of the mother of grandmother. And at that time, obviously, the shareholders had difficulties to be convinced, and we moved to something that has the same meaning, Le Bon Coin. The first important thing about Le Bon Coin, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, is that since day one, we've kept focus. How should I say, Olivier? You've said that in American English there could be something like an interpretation about it. So, focus. Thank you. So we've kept the focus on 4 simple things. To be easy, I don't know if some of you don't know the Bon Coin. I would be relatively surprised, but 2 years ago there would be more than 50% of the room who wouldn't know anything about it. 3 years ago, probably 10 of us would have known a bit about it. So we've suddenly emerged coming out of the blue, coming from nowhere, and within a year, the company that was born in 06 made 18 million euros in 09 and was profitable after 2 years. So there should be some recipe about not that much being a copycat, but a copycat that surpasses the model. And that may well be the interesting question. The only interesting question from my end, why? Just because there is another rule that seems to be much more important to me than being a copycat or not. It's that on the internet, the winner takes all. So either you're the one making 80% of the market, or you start suffering, and just to go back to what Pierre said, or your EBIT is going to be rapidly an issue. So what those 2 industrials, Schibsted, the Norwegian, and Speer and West France, the very traditional, old-fashioned French, have done, is that they've incubated a coming out of nowhere piece of software, not a website, and have kept it aside from their traditional businesses so that they wouldn't, or we wouldn't suffer from it. So there were no links from an organizational standpoint. There were no duties, no constraints, nothing but freedom in a kind of autonomous way, so that this intrapreneurial adventure could have the same basic values than any kind of traditional, normal, usual startup.
Okay, well, I'm just going to ask you now to come back to something you touched on a lot earlier, which was that Price Minister is actually not a copycat because it's adjusted or adapted or whatever you want to call it for the French market. What did you have to do to make your site respond to the local demand?
So I won't talk about, but it could be interesting, but obviously then it would need a kind of hour. I won't talk about the art of technology transfer, but that is also a kind of interesting rule, because if the Bon Coin is a piece of software more than a website, obviously when you're moving from Sweden 9 million to France 62 million, or from some million units posted a month to 15 millions, and tomorrow I suspect 20 millions or more, then obviously your piece of software, the architecture, has to evolve dramatically. So I won't cover this one, but what we've done, first of all, when I said transliterated, is find the right way to communicate locally. I mean, it's a kind of old story, this glocal story. The think global, because by the way, the Bon Coin exists in 20 countries, but it's not the same in Portugal, in Greece, in Norway, in France, or in Italy, because it's called differently, because the marketing piece work and actions are different based on the local cultures, and it's also a kind of unique and experimental startup company just because it's the Blocket family, so it is united, and nevertheless it is different from a country to another. Whatever the recipes are, they are different from a marketing standpoint. Nevertheless, there are 4 qualities, always the same all over the world, and if all startups would focus on the same, probably there would be even more winners than the number of winners we have. First, it is easy. So in American English, they say, keep it simple, stupid. In France, in French, we invented the ISO9 Michu story. So what it means is that even my grandmother, even if she's doing something else with eyes, brain, or left hand, can place an ad like that. It's a no-brainer attitude that allows each and everybody to use the site. I don't know if some of you went to Price Minister or eBay, but I can tell you that there are more than 1%, more than 10%, more than 20% of those went and tried to place an ad, went away. So it's to be easy. Then, to answer your question, Roxanne, it's proximity. I mean, Le Bon Coin is the guy next door. It's Georgette, it's La Boulangère, it's your best and old friend. And because it's proximity, everything has been done and developed and is communicated on this one aspect. If you go to the north of France, there are probably, no, they are not probably, there are 1.5 million households in Nord-Pas-de-Calais. Le Bon Coin is proposing 1.5 million ads. So I'm not telling you that there is one ad per household, but just to demonstrate that thanks to its kind of very local approach, it's becoming and appropriated locally. So the marketing spendings from scratch, and it is important, the brand building from scratch, and it is essential, but the buzz, the word of mouth, the guy next door is as important. That's why Le Bon Coin, the brand, is so important.
Okay, now I'm going to ask you, France as a market for copycat startups, or companies, whatever, how does it position itself in Europe? Because a lot of people say, you know, France is kind of a special place. If you look at Russia, or if you look at China, closed markets, very difficult for foreigners to go into. It makes sense to develop, or even Germany, because they seem to have people that have a local preference for what they've got actually developed in Germany. What is the situation in France?
So I won't talk about neither the French cultural the French cultural difference or our traditional arrogance. I think it's it's kind of, should I dare saying
do
bullshit?
It. I think
bullshit?
You should do it.
It's a bit bullshit for me. I mean, Germany is bigger than France, great. So German people, more opportunity to sell. Yes, no, I don't know. I think it's really not the issue or the problem. If there is a good idea, if it is a first-class idea on the internet or elsewhere, it can travel. And if it can travel, it can be localized. And if it is localized the right way, it's no longer a Me Too. It's just a local transliteration that gives value to the original concept. If we go back to Dailymotion, I mean, is it that different from YouTube? It has been invented in France. Is it a reason why Dailymotion has resisted a bit before YouTube became #1? I don't know. I'm not sure it's the right way to formulate, because on the internet, like everywhere else, either it's a good product, Le Bon Coin is a good product, and a lot of others are not, and that's why maybe the winner takes all. But if Le Bon Coin is in Norway or in Sweden and called Blocket, or in Italy and called Subito, being a copycat or not, it's not an issue. It's not a question.
Okay. So what I understood is that there's almost no definition. It's impossible to be a copycat.
At least I don't want to fall into what I would consider being a trap.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. If I could get a round of applause. I think we have time for a couple of questions from the room. So why don't we start with name, please introduce yourself and ask a question, and don't sell anything, because if that happens again, I'm going to be really mad. Thanks.
Okay, hello. Thank you very much. My name is Laurent. I'm starting a startup. Okay, by the objective is the end of the year. My question is to complete what you said, because you said there are 4 key success drivers. First one is easy, make it easy. Proximity. What are the 2 else, please?
I mean, there is one that is common to each and every single good product on the internet, and it is called quality. So on Le Bon Coin, on a classified website, quality means that every single ad has been reviewed manually before it is published, since day one, and before we had technical capabilities to filter. And if it is black or if it is white, then it can go through technical filters. But if there is something that makes us feel that it's gray a bit, then it is manually reviewed. So the quality of the product and of the ad that is published is better than anybody else. That is the first And I won't develop around quality, but quality is crucial. And the other one is specific to the classified. If you would look at a website dedicated to the classified, whatever, automotive or real estate or whatever, you would notice that there is a lot of words, a lot of text, and a very small image. Le Bon Coin was launched with an image that was covering 3/4 of the screen and a text, because it's easier and much richer just to show a car than to talk about it. And it gives the guys or the prospects the feeling that it is an interesting or potential interesting product to buy. So visibility, easy, proximity, quality, and transliterate to your own markets or startups, obviously, and you'll keep the rules.
So the rule is make a good company. I think that's what I understood. Yep. Okay, so let's take another question.
Hi, Lauren Kaliski from Zenlist. I'm working also in the classified space. The classifieds marketplace online is dominated by a handful of really big players. Do you think, and they're all kind of based on the Craigslist model, more or less. Do you think that there's room for disruption, changing the model?
I mean, what is great with the internet is that by nature, it is a market where creativity and therefore disruption do exist. Le Bon Coin, I didn't talk about the strategy, but the strategy was disruptive. In France, 100% of the website, apart from eBay, based on another model, were not free. But the fact we were free was an extremely efficient way to enter the marketplace and rapidly, because the product was good, to take a very strong position. And in Sweden, Blocket became a paid site after 3 or 4 years, having dominated. They moved from a huge audience to a paid model. We kept the model. So Le Bon Coin is a 15, or will probably, I don't have the figures for this year and I have left the company, but will probably reach 40 or 50 million euros and is a free site. Interesting. So there is room for disruption. Look for disruption.
Okay, so we have time for one last question. And I guess if you guys didn't see it, it passed on the screen that the hashtag for this event is in the Twitter trends in France. So thank you guys for tweeting. All right, let's take a last question. Anyone? Okay, thank you very much.
Merci.